Time for our property chat, of course, with REA Group Economist Anne Flaherty. And a very good morning to you. The cost of living is rising rapidly, and this is pushing the Reserve Bank to move hard on interest rates, as we know. Where is the property market likely to head over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, the cost of living is rising rapidly. Last year's figures showed inflation at 6.1%, which leaves little doubt in most people's minds that the Reserve Bank's going to lift interest rates next week by probably at least 50 basis points. So already we're starting to see higher interest rates push down property prices. Our expectation is that with further interest rate rises on the cards, those decreases are likely to accelerate over the coming months.
It's interesting, though. I read an article in one of the papers this morning from a real estate expert saying that, look, don't get ahead of ourselves here because they may not drop as much as we think because there's a lot of money washing around.
Yeah, there are a very wide array of forecasts out there. So there's been a lot of headlines talking about 30% price drops. We aren't forecasting drops that high. If we look at the last couple of months, we've seen very slight decreases in prices so far. So in Melbourne and Sydney, property prices peaked, earlier this year, and since that time they've fallen by less than 2% from their peak. So I think that it's also important to look at what happened in previous interest rate hikes and previous downturns in the property market. I don't think that we have seen price drops of more than 10% in any of those previous downturns. So that should give a little bit more context to where we could be headed.
Which areas are likely to see the largest declines, do you think?
Well, what we usually see is that the more expensive markets tend to see larger price drops. This really isn't surprising when you consider that, say, in Sydney, where you've got the highest average loan size, people are relatively more sensitive to interest rate rises. On the other hand, areas like Adelaide and Perth and, even within states, those more affordable suburbs, where people don't need to borrow as much to buy, those prices are more resilient.
Spring will change things, though, won't they? And look, we're traditionally quiet, particularly the latter part of July and early part of August. But get to the back end of August and September, people really start to put their properties up because the weather's better.
Yeah, actually, we've seen a relatively strong winter. So usually we see the number of properties that come up for sale significantly lower in winter, and it is lower this winter, but it's actually significantly higher than what we normally see, not just when we have a pandemic. So there are a lot of vendors putting their properties up for sale at the moment, and that's definitely going to increase over spring. So it'll be a good time, I think, for buyers. Already we're seeing that, while buyer demand has decreased from last year's levels, it's still very healthy. And that's, but at the same time, buyers have a little bit more breathing space than they did. So they don't have to put in those offers as quickly as they were.
It's actually interesting, isn't it, when you look at it? Because I'm a bit of a nuffy when it comes to property and real estate. I love it. I love watching it all work. It could be a good time to sell for some people too.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's always opportunities in the property market. And I think that, it's doom and gloom headlines can be really off-putting for a lot of people and actually cause a lot of anxiety. But it's important to remember that, we all need somewhere to live. Australia has, historically seen very strong population growth. We're predicted to continue to see population growth pick up over the coming years. And all of these factors are going to support our property market. So I do hope that, those really, really negative media headlines aren't causing too much anxiety.
What about auctions? Are there many about?
Yes, we do have a relatively strong winter weekend ahead. So compared to what we were seeing certainly last year when we were going into lockdowns, we have far, far more auctions. We also have more auctions than we typically see over winter. At the same time, though, with cooling pressures emerging in the market, we are seeing a lot of people reconsider their selling methods. So we're seeing a slight shift away from auctions towards other sales methods as those clearance rates start to come down.
Okie dokie. All right, well, enjoy the weather. It's nice and cold, but have a great weekend, Anne.
Thanks, you too.